cool up there. There's Now I do. Now I do. I've got it done. The May 18th, 2023 hearing for the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission is now called to order. And could I have you silence any of your audible devices this morning? And if I could have asked you to please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning, those of you in the chambers and those of you listening on the PLDRC webinar. Ms. Tucker, could I please have a roll call?
Member Bender? Here. Member Costa?
Here.
Member Patterson?
Here.
Member Sixma?
Here.
Chair Mills?
Here.
And Edith Shelley is absent.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Okay, I would also like to welcome back Mr. Bender. Good to see you back.
Good to see his face back here.
And we do not have any minutes to deal with this morning, so we're going to move right on into my comments. And I would like to say that if anyone would like to speak for or against any of the cases being heard today, if I could get you to please fill out a form at the back of the dais here and give it to Ms. Tucker to my extreme left. We will be limiting you to a 3-minute time limit. After the comments have been heard, I will give the applicant an opportunity to address any concerns and the speakers have and answer any questions the commissioners may have. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Soria for legal comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a reminder for members of the public that decisions by this body on special exception cases and cases which rezone real property from one classification to another pursuant to the zoning ordinance are recommendations only to the County Council and do not constitute a final hearing. So no new evidence may be introduced at the County Council public hearing. Decisions on variances made by this body constitute final action subject to an appeal to the County Council. And what this means is that no new evidence may be presented at the time of County Council public hearing on the appeal. An aggrieved party that appeals such a decision is confined to the record made before this body. Hearings by this body on rezonings, special exceptions, and variances are quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that this body is acting more like a court and must take into account all oral, written, or demonstrative evidence presented. Their decisions on these cases must be based on competent substantial evidence in the record, and competent substantial evidence has been defined as that evidence a reasonable mind would accept to support a conclusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Soria. And while we're on legal comments, I would like to ask the commission to disclose for the record any ex parte communications that have occurred before or during the public hearing on which a vote is to be taken on any quasi-judicial matter. And I'll start with my immediate right with Mr. Bender.
None.
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 And I have none. Okay, we do have an item this morning to be continued. It's B23049. If I could get Ms. Smith, could I get the information on that?
Yes, sir. The applicants are out of state and would like to continue until the next meeting, which is June 15th.
Okay.
You make a motion
Yes, we do.
to what's the date?
The next meeting would be
June 15th.
Okay, June 15th. Okay, I'll make a motion. We continue case B23049 till the June 15th meeting.
second.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Sixma to continue V23049 to our next meeting of the June 15th, 2023, and a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We also have some unfinished business to contend with here this morning. It's the V23054, and it's my understanding they want to withdraw.
Yes, sir. We got an email last night from the applicant and they would like to withdraw their application.
Okay, do we need a motion on that, other than, we do need a motion? Okay, all right, if I
So,
could get,
so a motion just to withdraw it, or?
well, that's-
Yes, because
that's
it's
what they're
been
telling me.
noticed.
Okay.
So you need to finally close it out. It also
Okay.
provides the persons who, are interested, who oppose the item, to essentially, if you
Close
don't
it.
act on the withdrawal, you can force the item to be heard and then render a formal denial.
Okay, so this is just a formal closing of the case, okay. I'll make a motion that case B 23054 be closed, for the applicant,
Withdrawn.
withdrawn, yeah.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion for Mr. Sixma to withdraw V 23054 from the request from the applicant, and a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're gonna move right on into our new business this morning, and Mr. Sixma, could I get the first case read, please?
This is the application of Sharon and William Mignardi, owners requesting variances to the minimum yard requirements, maximum fence height, and maximum lot coverage in urban single-family residence R4 zone property.
Thank you, Mr. Sixma, and this is Ms. Ray.
Good morning, Kristen Ray, Planning and Development Services. This property is a corner lot and is subject to 2 front yards and 2 side yards. The single-family residence is a non-conforming structure and may continue in the present condition but cannot be enlarged or altered in any way that increases the nonconformity. Any proposed additions would require a variance. The applicants are seeking 5 variances for a proposed front porch addition, a proposed garage addition, and a 6-foot fence. Variance 1 is to reduce the west front yard from 25 feet to 10.10 feet for the proposed front porch addition. Variance 2 is to reduce the south front yard from 25 feet to 11.5 feet for the proposed front porch addition. Variance 3 is to reduce the south front yard from 25 feet to 23.7 feet for the proposed garage addition. Variance 4 is to increase the maximum fence height from 4 feet to 6 feet in the west front yard. And variance 5 is to increase the maximum lot coverage from 35% to 38.98%. Staff's recommendation for variances 1 through 5 is for denial. Should the PLDRC find that the applicants have provided competent substantial evidence, the following condition has been provided for consideration. Variances 1 through 5 are limited to the size and location as shown on the variance site plan. I do also want to note that 11 letters of support were submitted from adjacent property owners. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, is the applicant present? Good morning. Could I get your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. My name is Sharon McNarty, 131 Ocean Air Terrace South, Ormond Beach.
I'm William Mignardi, same address, 131 Ocean Air Terrace South.
Okay, you've heard the staff report this morning. Anything that you'd like to add to that?
I do have a couple of items.
Okay.
Thank you so much for hearing our variance this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time to do that, and thank staff for all of their assistance in helping us through the variance process. The variances that we're requesting are going to coincide with construction of some hurricane damage that was done during Hurricane Ian. We sustained roof damage and subsequent leaks in the house and water damage. So we want to do the construction of these additions at the same time so we won't have to re-roof the house twice. And the fence replacement is also due to hurricane damage by Nicole. We got hit twice. So we just want to replace the existing 6-foot fence with a like 6-foot fence that matches the rest of the neighborhood and our adjacent property.
Okay.
So I'm here for any questions.
Okay, any questions for the applicant?
Sorry. Are you fine with the staff recommendations if we approve it? Because
the conditions.
Conditions, yeah.
The conditions, I think, were just to stay within the scope of the proposed additions.
Yeah, but you have no problems with that, right?
No problems,
Okay.
no.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, we'll see if we have any public participation other than the letters of support that we have received.
Okay.
And if we do have any, I'll give you an opportunity for rebuttal. If we don't, then we'll go ahead and move forward, okay?
No, sir.
None, okay. We're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion or a motion. Wake up, guys.
I'm getting there, hang on. I make a motion on case V-23-053 that variances 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 be approved with the one staff recommended condition.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Costa to approve variances 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of V-23-053 with the one staff condition. And a second from Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Sixma, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, you can. Application Mark Simmons, owner requesting a variance to separate non-conforming lots on forestry, resource, and resource corridor zone property.
Thank you,
Good morning.
Mr. Sixma. And this is Mr. Hanson.
Good morning, Michael Hanson, Planning Development Services. For this particular variance case, we're looking at a variance to separate non-conforming lots. If you review the aerial on the screen, the subject parcel that Mr. Simmons owns is highlighted in yellow. The adjacent parcel that it has common ownership is immediately to its west. The subject parcel is 19.59 acres, and it's split zone between our forestry resource zoning classification and our resource corridor zoning classification. Because of the size of the property, it's non-conforming to the size of the current zoning classifications. However, in 1988, the subject parcel was created in its current configuration by a quitclaim deed that separated the parcel from the adjacent parcel. In 1990, April 3rd of 1990, the county adopted its comprehensive plan, and then we had a subsequent administrative rezoning, which rezoned the property and from its previous zoning classification of A2, rural agriculture, which at the time it met the zone required lot size of the zoning and width and was a conforming parcel. After the administrative rezoning to its current zoning classifications of forestry resource and resource corridor zoning, it became a non-conforming parcel. It's part of the Lafayette Landings subdivision. It's one of the larger parcels in that subdivision. And in review of the criteria, based on the previous historical zoning and the fact that it was a conforming parcel only made non-conforming due to county action, staff has a recommendation for approval in this variance. I'm available for any questions the PLDRC may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Okay, any questions for staff? All right, I'm assuming you're the applicant, sir?
Yes, Mark Simmons,
You want to give me your address for the record, your name and address?
1 Pine Land Lane, Palm Coast, Florida, 32164. Mark A. Simmons.
Okay, you heard the staff report. Anything you would like to add to that?
No, I'm looking forward to be a part of the airport community out there. It's been a long process to get to where we are to this point, and develop and put a house in and a hangar on there and live in an airport community with my other, I think, 8 neighbors, which would be kind of nice.
Okay, is there any questions for the applicant? All right, we do have one public participation. It looks like they're in favor. So what we're going to do is bring them forward, and if you would like to speak after they do, I'll have you come back.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Harvey Shulman.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for
Morning,
hearing me.
If I can get your name and address for the
Oh,
record, sir.
sure. Harvey A. Schulman, 3110 Lafayette Landings Drive, De Leon Springs.
All right, sir. You had some comment you would like to add to this?
Yes, I've spoken to all of the neighbors, the majority of neighbors at Lafayette Landings. The immediate butter, Lorraine Day, she's not in great health, so I got her approval, and there are no objections from the majority of property owners at Lafayette Landings, and that's all I have to say.
All right, sir. Any questions for the speaker? All right, you can have a seat. Mr. Simmons, would you like to comment on what he just said, or you good? Okay. All right, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open it up for commission discussion or a motion.
I don't know who's has been out there and has not, but that's a great development out there, really. It's just like a hidden little treasure. I love it out there. I'll make a motion, case V23055 be approved.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Sixma to approve variance V23055 and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Sixma, if I can get the next case read in, please. We're on 57.
Sorry. Case V23057, application of Mary Edwards, owner, requesting a variance to the minimum yard requirements on rural agricultural estate zone property.
Thank you, Mr. Sixma. Mr. Hanson, this one is yours.
Good morning once again. Michael Hanson from Planning and Development Services. This particular variance request is a variance to reduce the front yard setback in a rural agricultural estate zoning classification from 45 feet to 39 feet, as the applicant is looking at adding an addition onto the front of her house as a covered entryway. The proposed covered entryway would be 17 feet high, 36.08 feet long, and 18 feet in width. As you can see on the site plan on your screens, there's also an easement. So for part of that cul-de-sac where the street fronts, that is 30 feet in width. So we measure the front yard setback from the interior side of a road easement. So based on the proposed addition's location, we're looking at a variance to reduce it from 45 to 39 feet. In review of the criteria for the variance, staff found that it only met the criteria for criteria 5, noting that the proposed addition would likely not be injurious to the surrounding area due to the fact that there is some natural screening in the front yard from adjacent properties and the street due to some mature tree growth. Otherwise, the proposed addition for the covered entryway is based on the designs provided by the applicant. It could potentially be redesigned to not need a variance to the front yard. I will yield for any questions the PLDRC may have.
I have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Costa?
Yep. Quick question for you on the, because it's too small for me to read. What is the actual dimension, the length from the property line to the addition? You got 39 to the end of the easement, but how much is it with the easement? What's it? I didn't catch that.
The easement itself is 30 feet in width. So from the edge of the western property line, we'd be looking at 69.4 feet.
Which would make them well within the setbacks if we took it from the property line.
That's correct.
Okay.
However, the road's 30 feet into the property.
Understand. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, is the applicant present? Would you like to come forward? Okay. All right, the applicant's present but does not wish to speak. Do we have any public participation for this, Ms. Tucker?
No, sir.
No public participation, so we're going to close the floor for public participation and then open up to commission discussion or motion.
Unless there's no discussion, I'll make a motion. Case number V23057, a motion to approve the variance with, do we have any staff recommendations here? Yes, with the one staff recommendation.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve V23057 from Mr. Costa and a second from Mr. Patterson with the one staff recommended condition. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Ms. Sixman, if I could get the next case, please.
Case V23058, application of Ernest and Barbara Abney, owners requesting variances to the minimum yard requirements and to separate non-conforming lots on forestry, resource, and prime agricultural zone property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sixman. Ms. Ray, this one's yours.
Good morning. The applicants are seeking 2 variances in order to convert an existing accessory structure into a single-family residence. Variance 1 is to separate the subject parcel from the parcel to the north and to the south. The parcel to the north held common ownership in 1994 before either current owners obtained their property. And the parcel to the south was previously owned by the applicants, but is now owned to their son-in-law. Variance 2 is to reduce the south side yard from 50 feet to 48.7 feet for the existing accessory structure. The accessory structure was built in 1998 under an agricultural exemption, therefore was not subject to the minimum yard requirements of the A1 zoning classification. Staff's recommendation is to approve variance 1 as it met all 5 criteria, and deny variance 2 as it failed to meet 1 of the 5 criteria. Should the PLDRC find that the applicants have provided competent substantial evidence, the following conditions have been provided for your consideration. Variance 2 is limited to the size and location as shown on the variance site plan, and the applicant shall apply for a change of use permit within 60 days of the approval of the variances. I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? I have a question. You mean if a property has an agricultural exemption and they build a structure, when the agricultural exemption goes away, that is non-conforming then? Is that
Well,
correct?
it was never permitted, so it needs to comply with the current zoning and building permit criteria. The benefit of having an ag classification is you don't need permits to put up your barn, or your non-residential farm building. It's easy to put up, should be easy enough to tear down. Because it is being converted into a habitable structure, it needs to come in compliance with all of our codes. Because it doesn't meet Florida Building Code, it doesn't meet setbacks. It's not a legal non-conforming structure because the legislature has rendered those non-residential farm buildings outside of our jurisdiction. They can just put them up. So there's no way for us to legally look at it and say, okay, you're good to go, because
So
it's
this is
completely outside
because
of our
they're
system.
putting in a residential
Yes.
there rather than just using it as a barn.
Even if they used it as a barn, they would still need to comply with, the permit requirements.
Okay.
My understanding is that they are requesting to turn it into a residence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of heightens the criteria. We don't want to make them into a legal non-conforming structure for the residents because, as you know, if it gets damaged beyond 75%, that thing needs to go away and they need to rebuild in conformance with the land development code.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and I'm sorry I didn't catch this sooner, But under condition number 1, we are recommending that you limit it to the size and location. Because this is a change of use and they will be building a house, the intention was to just make sure that we don't go further than the 48.6 feet. But we would not want to limit them or make them come back if they're building and they go bigger, but within their allowable areas. So if we could strike the word size, that will give them more flexibility in what they're converting.
Okay. And that's in your condition.
Condition number 1, it would just, now would read variance 2 is limited to the location as shown on the variance site plan.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. And thank you, Mr. Sawyer, for your explanation. Is the applicant present? You want to come forward, please? And if I could get your name and address for the record.
I'm Barbara Abney, and I'm at 1800 Rhonda Lane, Pearson, Florida, formerly 1806 Rhonda Lane, in December.
All right.
I'm Ernest Craig Abney, formerly 1806 Rhonda Lane, now at 1800 Rhonda Lane.
All right. You've heard the staff report this morning. Anything you'd like to add to it?
Well, we, years ago, I never thought I'd ever be living in it, possibly living in the barn. But due to, circumstances, I'm trying to retire, and due to circumstances, this is the most equitable way for us to retire. And so we thought we'd just stick a house in the back of it, and our family really loves it out there. So we, they hate for us to even get rid of it. So we just like to retire, and then the family take it when we pass on.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant?
Something I'll say, it's always better to live in the barn than the doghouse.
Our family's calling us barn rats now.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Okay. Ms. Tucker, do we have any public participation for this case?
No, sir.
All right. We're going to go ahead and close it for public participation and then move on with the case, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to close it for public participation and open it up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion on it.
All right, go ahead.
Nobody
Mr.
else has anything else to say about it? I'll say case V23058 be approved with the 2 changes, but on variance 1, we're taking size out and just leaving location, correct?
Variance 2.
Variance, okay,
Yeah,
variance.
it's condition 1 of variance 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's how many conditions, 2?
There's 2 conditions, yeah.
And then the condition 1 is size.
It's remove the word size, so we'd just read variance 2 is limited to the location as shown on the variance site plan, would give the applicants more flexibility to design or modify the barn so long as they don't intrude further into the 48.7 feet.
Okay.
Gotcha. So what Paolo said.
What'd you say?
I said what he just said right there.
Okay.
And,
So trying to put that
and
in words.
I'll second that, so
Yeah.
good luck reading that one back.
Okay. And the size, that was in condition 2, correct?
Condition 1.
Condition
variance.
1,
Condition
yeah.
1.
We're taking size out.
Got it.
There you go.
Okay, I've got a motion.
Oh, we're removing.
All right. I've got a motion to approve variances 1 and 2 with the staff recommended conditions except for condition 1 to remove the
Size.
word size
Mm-hmm.
from Mr. Sixsmith. And who was the second? And Mr. Costa was the second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Mr. Sixman, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, case S-22-104, application of Christopher Hitt, agent for owners requesting a special exception for a parochial school or rural agricultural zone property. Easy
Thank
for
you,
guys
Mr.
to say.
Sixman. Mr. Shams, this one is yours.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams with Planning and Development Services. The applicant is requesting the special exception for a parochial school at an existing church on 11.39 acres. The school would be for pre-kindergarten through high school. The church was purchased by the property owner in March of 2022 with the intent to establish the school. In 1986, the previous owner received an approved special exception for a house of worship in A2 and an approved final site plan to establish the Living Word Church. In 1996, the church expanded the property with 3 modular units for Sunday school services. According to the applicant, the previous owner utilized the church as a parochial school without an approved special exception for the lifetime of their ownership. Following the sale in 2022, the school ceased operation, and now the applicant is seeking to meet county regulations and reestablish a school. The transportation impacts were assessed and is expected to generate 130 p.m. peak hour trips at full enrollment. The school is seeking to enroll 100 students. Traffic engineering has required a traffic impact assessment pursuant to subdivision regulations. The applicant also applied for a variance for 2 existing structures, which is the case to be heard after this one. Overall, staff recommends approval as the application meets special exception criteria. The house of worship and parochial school are uses consistent with the surrounding residential development pattern, and the parochial school will serve the public interest and provide an alternative educational option. In addition, the school has already been operating for decades, so any impacts felt would have already occurred. If the PLDRC recommends approval to the County Council, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, that the special exception will not become effective until such time that the Volusia County building official and fire marshal sign off on all life safety issues of operating the existing site plan or existing site as a parochial school. And the maximum number of off-street parking spaces will not exceed 166 spaces, which was permitted on the approved final site plan in 1986. And I'm available for comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. Any questions for the staff? Hearing none, is the applicant present?
Chris Height, 1822 Taylor Road, Port Orange, Florida.
All right, Mr. Height, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to it?
No, thankful for everyone's help. It's been a long journey, some unexpected requirements when we purchased the property, but I think we're good.
Okay. You'd like,
Pete Zahn Engineering, 150 South Palmetto, Daytona. We're the engineers on the project. We do have a traffic impact analysis. We got a comment from the traffic engineer. We're going to have to add a turn lane. So we've already, our site plan is in process with the county right now. We can't finish it until the special exception goes through. So we will be adding a turn lane. We're trying to see if there's a way that we can limit the initial number of students so that this turn lane could be put off for some time so that the time and expense associated with it can be put off till perhaps the summer next year, because they want to get into classes in August this year. The parking spaces, I'm really not sure about the number. I know that we talked about that on our site plan, and we had a certain number of spaces that are out there, and we had accounted for them. And I just don't remember the detail on that, but I would like to be to remove that limitation subject to review during final site plan review, if that's okay, because I just don't remember the exact number, but it has been in existing use now for over 10 years, and so the parking is pretty well established.
Ms. Smith?
We don't object to that. The reason we put that in there was actually to help you through final site plan, because our parking requirements are very different from what's out there, and you do have a prior approval for that many parking spaces. Our concern is that they're going to limit you and reduce the number. So
that
it's
number
your
reflected
choice.
what's there versus what code
Yes,
would
sir.
require. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so you're better off leaving it there.
Yeah, we're okay. Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. I
And-
wasn't sure, I can't remember everything in detail about that, and that was one thing I'm concerned
Yeah.
about, but that answers the question perfectly.
And I will tell you that what we're doing here today is sending the recommendation to the council.
Right.
It won't be final until after they've heard it and made their decision on that, okay?
Mhm.
All right, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Costa?
Mr. Zahn, good to see you. Question for you. The turn lane, is that for the eastbound or the westbound?
Westbound.
So it'll be a center turn lane coming in?
No, it'll be a westbound.
Oh, westbound,
right
sorry, yes,
turn.
other way. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay. We don't have any comments from neighbors or anything on this one that we know
I
of?
don't know yet.
Okay.
Um,
We do? Okay. I have one question for Mr., pronounce your last name for me?
Height.
Height.
Yes, sir.
Maximum 150 students, correct?
Mhm.
How many students do you have right now?
22.
Okay. That, historically, that's been, when it was a rock church before and they were operating, were they more or less?
I couldn't speak to that, but I would say for sure 70, probably 60,
Okay.
70 kids, but we're completely a new organization.
Gotcha.
We actually,
There's 5 or 6 classrooms, so pretty extensive number of classrooms.
Okay, very good.
yeah, when we purchased the property, we made some reasonable assumptions. You know, being a school there, we were unaware there was, they were operating for 30-plus years
Mhm.
without special exception.
So you assumed that they had the approvals in place when you purchased? Yeah.
For sure. That and looking at we learned a valuable lesson.
Sure.
Property appraiser appraises that as school and church.
Mhm.
So we made some reasonable assumptions. But we're willing to submit to whatever. One of the things that is important, I don't know if it's, for today or perhaps at the county council hearing, but we of course went to start the school last year. And really just by the grace of God, we were able to start it at an off-site location, but it limited our capacity to 22 students.
Mhm.
So, which is, pretty difficult dynamics when you're trying to, create classroom structures and things like that. So our hope is that we can move, everything is ready. Obviously, we have some life safety issues that we're working through.
Mhm.
Sprinklers are being installed. Some of the challenges is that we're not able to move forward on the underground portion and things like that
Mhm.
because we've been waiting for this traffic study to be completed, which, I think Pete is complete at this point. Is that accurate?
Should be, yep.
Yeah, so we're just trying to move as fast as we can so that in hopes we could start this August in that location.
Another question, not to pick your site plan apart, but with 160 spaces, how much land does that leave you for outside activities for the students?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's 11.4 acres, and so we have, a pretty sizable playground area.
Okay.
We have a,
Site plan up there.
yeah, you can
Right.
see on
And
the
they
bottom.
purchased additional property so that lot to the-
Well, I'm looking at the aerial, so you've got it heavily wooded to the north of you, looks like the northwest of you.
Yes.
And that's why I'm questioning it. I'm a big
Sure.
proponent of students learn more outside than they do inside.
Sure. Yeah, we have a huge soccer field area. And then again, to the back right portion of the property, there's a sizable playground area.
Okay,
So-
all right, thank you.
Okay, we do have a public participation form. I will give you an opportunity for rebuttal after we've
Sure.
heard the comment,
Okay.
and we'll just get them up here.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Mack. And Ms. Mack, you turned in a form for the variance, but you'd like to speak to the special exception also, correct? That's fine. I mean, I just need to get you to fill out another form for the special exception also when you're done. You don't have to do it right now.
Yeah.
When you're done, just fill out another one for the special exception.
Very good. My name is Esther Mack. I live at 2417 Oak Creek Lane in Port Orange, Florida, in the Browns Landing subdivision, and I am adjacent to the property.
Okay, and you had some comments you would like to add?
Yes. I've been living in my home, in my community. We're about 70-plus homeowners since November of 2018. Formerly, the church was called Rock Church. Literally, they would have their services not an issue in the time that they were there. The new church comes along, and you can check the records. It's been about 10 times that I've had to call the church during the week in the evenings because they practice like a rock star band for their services on Sunday. It is so loud, the decibels are beyond normal. My husband has made a meeting with them one time, said, we got to take it outside. I can't hear. It rocks our house. It literally, if you know what a high bass system sounds like, it rocks our house, and it's in my bedroom with my windows closed. So the noise has already started, and last night I was there again. They had, I'm not sure what type of service they were having at the time. It was outside. There were children of all ages. They have speakers that are in the front of the building, which I can hear. I love music. I love church. It's not the reason why I'm opposing. It's the peace that I do not get in my own home, nor do my neighbors. I do not disturb their peace. I'm asking them not to disturb mine. They're going to have to do something. Now they want to do a school. So instead of just doing Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night of disturbances, they're going to do an all-day event 5 days a week. So my peace is never going to stop. It'll never stop, especially with 100 children or 150 children. And I know the piece of property that they're talking about, which is the second piece in the back there, which I line up along the whole section of their property. I'm lot 51. So that's what our concern is. The value of our property is also a concern. Like I said, the other church, not an issue. Never heard anything from them, ever, 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 literally. So their my question is I recall going to school and having recess. Like you said, the enjoyment of being outdoors. I enjoy being outdoors too. I do. I work from home. I will not be able to work outside of my lanai with recess of 150 kids on a constant hourly basis. They're not going to all be there at the same time. So it'll start from 8 o'clock to whatever time they leave, and then we're going to start jamming the music. So it's constant. This is just, unfortunately, I'm sorry that assumed they should have done their homework. Okay? And then we wouldn't be here today.
Okay, your time's run out. Let me see if we have any. Mr. Costa, you'd like to ask?
Yeah, what street do you live on?
I live on Oak Creek Lane, home site 51. So the whole.
Is that Brown's Landing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Do we have anyone else?
No, sir.
Okay. Could I get the applicant, would you like to respond to that, Mr. Hyatt?
Naturally, when we purchased the property, the only assumption we made was that the existing church and school, working with county for 30-plus years, fire inspections, that it was legit. So who's to blame? Volusia County, the church, both, doesn't matter. We're paying for it. So I don't think we made any unreasonable assumptions. I think we did do our homework, but that's, regardless, we want to be good neighbors. I also don't want to purchase a property that the neighbors tell us how to run our mission, our ministry, our organization. We certainly don't have any desire to do that there. So we've had the police, as she said, she called the police last night. They came. I personally spoke with the police officer, the deputy. He said, we're not breaking any rules. There's no crimes. There's nothing that we're doing that's a cause for their concern. And so, I understand, you built your house or purchased a house next to an existing church that was built 38 years ago. So that's, we do whatever we can. But, the reality is if you live next to a park, you're going to hear people. You live next to a community organization like a church, you're going to hear people.
Well, I guess I have a question as to if you're at an A2 zoning and then you don't want to consider addressing the noise issue?
Say
You
that
don't want to
again, I'm sorry.
consider addressing the noise issue? I mean, and taking your neighbors into, consideration?
No, we do. We do absolutely take them into consideration. I actually have a relationship with a man named Al. He lives directly next to the church, and we've talked many times. I've actually been in his house to hear what he hears, because we are concerned about it. Again, we don't have any desire to move in. I mean, we're open to the public, so we have no desire to be adversely affect our neighbors. However, there's only been 2 people that have complained this entire time. There may be more people who have a concern, but besides this applicant here or this lady here, there's only one other person who's complained who's not here today, who of course received the letters, called me. We played phone tag. We actually never spoke. I texted him twice, and he hasn't responded yet. But no, we're willing to do whatever we can within reason, as long as it doesn't affect the way that we do church.
Okay. Mr. Costa?
So you said law enforcement responded.
Correct.
County or city of Port Orange?
It's in the county.
County. So sheriff showed up. Is that the first time?
No, sir.
So they've showed up before.
They have.
Has anybody from county code enforcement showed up?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you been cited?
Never.
Never.
Mr. Costa, we did check our system. There are no code violations.
No code violations whatsoever. Okay. And the reason I'm going down that path is because I know that there is county ordinances on times and decibel levels.
Sure.
And I think that that's what will dictate here.
Sure.
Yes, I understand from a neighbor's perspective, if I had to listen to music 24/7, I would have a problem with it.
Sure.
But at the same time, the same token, you also have rights regarding the times that you can have X amount of decibels, start and finish times. And I think that maybe a combination of give and take between you and the neighbors, we can solve this amicably.
Sure.
Short of code enforcement getting in and sitting there with a meter at her house and your property and going through that whole, and it's time, money, and effort all the way through, and we basically get back to zero, which is your right say, hey, I can do this up to this time.
Right. We have, just the point of clarification, we have made some of those, for instance, with Al, the neighbor who has approached us.
Right.
We've agreed not to turn certain speakers on before 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. He specifically asked that we, can you just give me till 7:30? Normally we do 7 a.m. rehearsals for a 9 a.m. experience. So we've agreed to that. We've been committed to that for several months. Other things we do is we eliminate some of our speakers on Thursday night rehearsals, which, by the way, just a point of clarification, it's Wednesday night youth. Our youth meet on Wednesdays. Thursday night rehearsal from 7:30 till 9 p.m. And then Sunday mornings from, say, 7:30 to, say, probably 12.
This is just a point of advice.
Sure.
And take it as you will. Before you go to council with this, my suggestion would, I highly suggest that you potentially invite all the neighbors over and have a sit down face to face with everyone, like a community meeting, if you will.
Sure.
It may not go anywhere, but at least it'll show that you've made that effort.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents on that one. Thank you.
I'd like to ask one thing. Is the music inside or outside?
Correct. So most of it is inside. We do have ambient music outside. On Wednesday nights, we do have some speakers outside for youth. I've been over to Al's house adjacent to our property. In my opinion, it's just my opinion. It's, for what it's worth, it's not loud. It can be heard, kind of the same thing when you hear Rocktoberfest or you hear, different events at the Speedway. It's not loud. There's no, bringing a decibel meter, reader over would do nothing because the plane going overhead is louder than, so It's just that it can be heard. And so we've tried our best to make certain concessions. I'll certainly take Mr. Costa's advice. And, again, we've done that with those people who we've spoken to this individual here a couple times to my knowledge, one being last night. And so we have done that with the ones who, I don't know who's complaining, who hasn't come forward, but I'll certainly take that recommendation. The speakers, it's low-end frequencies, it's the bass that they're complaining about.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I didn't mean to cut into what you're saying, sir. The item before you is for a parochial school. The church itself is allowed to be there by right. What you all are considering as the school and the hours of operation are 8:30 a.m. to 3:20 p.m.
Correct.
I just want to make that distinction for you.
Which on the school side of things, I mean, this is irrelevant because we won't be using any of those, during those hours.
But Ms. Smith, we could put a special exception, the condition in there to limit the outdoor speakers. Is that not correct?
Well, that would depend upon whether or not it's part of the school. So, my advice is to not go into the operational aspects of the church itself, but for the school component, you are examining the way that the site functions for a school. So, outdoor component, I think that is kind of required for, whatever general education requirements are for the school. So, I'm not sure where you're going with the limitation of the outdoor aspect.
Well, it looks to me like that's where the problem is occurring. It's not necessarily what goes on within the school or in the church. It's the function that goes on the outside with the outdoor speakers. If you got a band on the outside, you're going to hear the noise if you're adjacent neighbor.
At the same time, that's a function of the church, which they're allowed to do by right. So to the extent where I don't know how you would tie it to the operation of the school, that they can't use outdoor speakers.
And that would probably be something code enforcement would deal with.
And this is, it is a fundamentally a noise ordinance issue. So schools and churches are considered residential in terms of receiving. So any receiving residential site between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., the limit is 60 decibels sustained over a 10-minute period, I believe. After 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m., it's 55 decibel. So those are your sound limitations. Those are enforced by the sheriff's office.
Are you not in code enforcement?
Sheriff's office is dictated by our ordinance as the primary for sound and noise violations. Most of the time it happens at night. Code enforcement can do it, but the primary is the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And plus probably especially the school, you need an outside speaker a lot, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of completely saying on the school side of things we couldn't play, or utilize amplification speakers at all. I think that would be unfair.
Try to work with the neighbors.
Of course.
It's a Christian organization.
And I think maybe at this point, I'd love to get code enforcement involved, just so that we know. This is not an uncommon issue. I've pastored almost 2 decades. This is a very common issue with churches that surround communities, neighborhoods. Just watch the news. It's in Orlando. I have 2 older brothers who pastor churches. This is not an uncommon issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Well, I've given you the 3 minutes. I'll give you a chance to come back up on your variance, though, because you are requesting to speak on 2 different things. So you spoke on a special exception, so we'll give you a chance on the variance. Okay. Anyone else would like to speak to this case? We're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion.
I have one question. I may have missed it when I stepped out. So are we reading V 23056 separately from S 22104?
Yes.
Two separate issues?
Yes.
Okay. All right. In that case, will make a motion that we forward special exception case number S-22-104 to county council for final action with a recommendation of approval.
Okay, I've got a motion to forward S-22-104, forward the special exception case to the county council for final action with recommendation of approval. Is that with the conditions, staff condition? Two conditions there.
Yes, I'll amend that with the two staff recommended conditions.
And Mr. Patterson? You good with that?
We'll second that.
Second that, okay. All right. He amended the
motion, yeah.
We're gonna take it all. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We're gonna take it all. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor, amended motion on the floor of the S-22-104, the forward special exception case to the county council for final action with recommendation of approval with the two conditions from staff. And a second from Mr. Costa and a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? Only thing of it is, I would like to make sure that the noise issue is addressed. I can understand if you got a band outside Wednesday night, how it would be kind of every Wednesday night. I know you may not think so, Mr. Sixman, but it does get annoying after a while, especially in the zoning classification that it's in. Anyway, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Could I get the next case, the variance to this case, read into the record, Mr. Sixman?
Application V 23056, application for CRISPR Height agent for owners requesting a variance to reduce minimum yard requirements on rural agricultural zone property.
Okay, and Mr. Shams, this is yours also.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams, Planning Development Services. The applicant is requesting variances to special exception criteria requirement for minimum setbacks of principal and accessory structures. Variance 1 is to reduce minimum setbacks on the western property line from 50 feet to 7 feet for an existing detached garage. And variance 2 is to reduce the minimum setbacks on the northern property line from 50 feet to 27 feet for an existing shed. The structures existed on the property prior to purchase by the current owners. The applicant recently applied for a lot combination to resolve inconsistencies for 2 other structures on site. It is the modular buildings used for Sunday school. Doing this created another inconsistency, which is the garage. The applicant has made every effort to conform to county regulations. Removing the structures would create undue hardship on the applicant. And the applicant has recognized the parochial school has been operating without a special exception and is attempting to satisfy the county's regulations. An expansion of uses is not being proposed, as the applicant is seeking to maintain what is existing. The proposed variances will not be injurious to the area and will not compromise public health, safety, or welfare. Overall, staff recommends approval as both variances satisfy 5 of the 5 criteria, and staff recommends the following conditions. The variances are contingent upon approval of the special exception for a parochial school and shall cease upon the abandonment or termination of the special exception. The variances are limited to size and location of the existing structures as depicted on the site plan. And I'm available for comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. Any questions for staff? And would the applicant like to speak to this? Mr. Height, the variant?
Just a point of clarification on the noise. I know that's maybe not related to this, but there's never has been, and we don't have any intention to have a band outside. It is all played through, an iPod or something like that. So for the variance, nothing to say.
Okay. All right, any questions for the applicant? Nope. Okay. And Ms. Mack, you've got a request to speak on the variance also, so if you'd like to come forward.
I'm just a little unclear about the variance issue. I'll do my best, and perhaps maybe the committee can help me, but, or the staff. So I understand that the church was a separate parcel, and then the home and the acreage behind it was separate. They purchased it together. So when I built my home, I knew the church was there. I did also know that there was a residential home on its own parcel as well. So to me, I thought that was going to be a one-family deal happening. Now you're asking to put outdoor space to accommodate them on a parochial school, which is going to cause more noise. They don't have a gym, or I don't think they do. I used to do my, growing up in school, had recess inside. When it was nice, we'll go outside. For the majority of the time, we were at auditorium. We had an auditorium to play in, or do our classes, whatever. I'm just asking that, why are they going to have permission to now take a residential piece of property and make use of outdoor space and noise, and then we, as homeowners, need to deal with that on a daily basis, forever and ever and ever?
Well, the variance is for the existing structures.
Oh.
That's what the variance is for.
The existing structures, so
The detached garage and an existing shed.
are they removing it or are they keeping it? I'm not sure.
They're requesting to keep it.
Okay. I don't even know where they are on the property, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not looking at the use of it. We're looking at the existing structures that is there.
Okay.
That's all we're looking at.
So then why are they asking the setbacks to be different from 50 to 7? Did I misunderstand that as well?
Because that's required under the zoning.
So I don't understand what that means.
If you, ma'am, if you look at the, what's depicted on screen, you can see where those two accessory structures are. You can kind of see that they are within the 50-foot setback. So it's a shed and a detached garage. So they're requesting.
Sir, I'm going to let staff
So the
address her,
variance is
sir.
for- To allow
I don't
that,
remember the name.
Mhm.
and to allow that to remain as they are.
Okay.
Don.
It's not to change any of the setback
Pizon, Mr. Pizon.
for that variance.
Okay. And then where's the added parking going to be, my question? If they're needing more parking?
No, we're not.
No, it's existing. Mr. Pizon. I'm going to let staff address her questions, if you don't mind. I know you're trying to help, but we have to keep a formality.
Okay. Well, variance 2 does not affect me. And I think I do see the shed outside my home.
That's all they're asking for.
That's irrelevant. It's
Okay.
the noise.
Okay.
It's the noise, as he elaborated on one more time. I want my peace. I deserve my peace. We do nothing to disturb theirs. I don't want to be disturbed.
I
I
understand.
don't. And my understanding is that the decibel thing, if I have to be out there every day to check it, I will. Okay.
Okay.
So I will.
Okay. Any other public participation forum for the variance?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, would you like to address that? All right. Okay, we don't have any other public participation forums or speakers, so we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'm ready for a motion, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, I am.
I make a motion that we approve variance requests 1 and 2 on case number V-23-056 with the 2 staff recommended conditions.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion for Mr. Costa, Yeah, Mr. Costa to approve variances 1 and 2 for V 23056 with the 2 staff recommended conditions and a second for Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And Ms. Mack, where did she leave? Okay, did she ever fill out another form?
We can add that case number to her same form since they are related to the same property.
Okay. All right. Mr. Six.
Case
can I get you to read
PUD
the next?
23-006, application of Cobb Cole Attorneys at Law agent for owners requesting a rezoning from urban two-family residential zoning classification to planned unit development zoning classification with a residential subclassification PUD.
Thank you, Mr. Sixma. Mr. Shams, this one is yours.
Hi, good morning again. The applicant is looking to rezone from R6 to PUD on a 6.35 acre property. The applicant is seeking to rezone to develop with 8 single-family and 32 two-family homes with Habitat for Humanity. Volusia County's Community Assistance Division has designated this project as a certified affordable housing project. On the current zoning, the property can be developed with 36 single-family or 48 two-family units. The PUD allows for a specific mixture of housing types. So what's interesting about this project is there's a restrictive covenant. It was in the staff report packet. And this dictates how the housing will remain affordable. So it establishes an affordability period of 15 years, and it permits a waiver of building permit fees and a deferral of Volusia County impact fees. What it will do is place 2 liens on the property for the amount of the building fees and impact fees. The building permit lien will be in effect for the 15-year affordability period. During this time, housing must remain affordable and sold to qualified buyers during it. If sold at market rate, building permit fees will be due in full, and the lien will be terminated at the end of the affordability period. For the impact fees, this lien will be in effect for perpetuity or until time the property is sold at market rate. If ever sold at market rate, the impact fees calculated at the time of the development approval will be due. Overall, the project will meet the PUD requirements for 20% common open space and 15% tree protection. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as the current future land use is urban medium intensity, and the proposed number of units are consistent with the allowable density. The project is urban infill residential and meets comprehensive plan policies related to discouraging urban sprawl, developing where utilities are already available, and encouraging affordable housing. The project would result in 378 daily trips and 51 PM peak hour trips, which is a reduction of 75 daily trips from the maximum allowable development of the R6 zoning class. The site is also about a 1/10 of a mile from a Votran bus stop, so trip generation could be reduced if the residents utilize public transit. Overall, staff recommends approval as the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommends forwarding to County Council with a recommendation of approval with one condition, that it is subject to the staff recommended order and resolution. And I'm available for comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. Any questions for staff? All right, hearing none, is the applicant present?
Good morning, everyone.
How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. Jessica Gal with Cobb Cole Law Firm, 149 South Woodward Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. I will be quick because Steve stole all my fun facts that I was going to share. So he did a great job. We've got a bigger group than I usually do with me today because we have a lot of people really excited about this project. So we have Lori and Jeff with Habitat for Humanity for the Greater Volusia. We have Pete Zahn, who's sticking around for our item after that last one that he worked on, and Matt Welch in our office at Cobb Cole with me. I think you guys have seen over the past 2-3 years, the county really focused on how we bring affordable housing forward. Habitat has obviously always been a name in that game. They have been here in Volusia County since 1986. On May 12th, they dedicated their 109th house. And so they've been dedicating to not only providing housing where the owners have kind of sweat equity in it. They're a part of, the building and construction. They have the ability to get zero interest mortgages and kind of, work through that affordability provision. But they also do a lot of education and outreach on what it means to be a homeowner, going through the, down payment assistance and all the struggles and things like that that sometimes stand in the way of transitioning our citizens to home ownership. They target essential workers, so we have, that key area here. The county specifically, the Affordable Housing Summit was maybe 2 years ago. Cobb Court participated. I know Trish and Steve worked from then to put together the toolbox of what tools we can have to promote affordable housing, whether it's density bonuses, which we're not using here, impact fee waivers or deferrals, building permit waivers, all of those things, and we haven't put them into action yet. And so I'm excited that this is the first PUD that kind of puts those tools into play to see how this will move forward. I like to say that on our side, the land use attorneys kind of work with you guys to make a vision possible. The team behind me is the team that will help build the houses and make it a reality and turn these individuals into homeowners. And so we're really excited. We think it's a great project, 40 new houses. You imagine they've done 189 in the past and we can knock out 40 right now. It's really exciting. And we're here for any questions you guys have.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes. Am I looking at this correctly? Is that 2 homes per lot?
So there are 2 families when you get back off of Flomich. So on Flomich, there's a cluster of 8 single family.
Mhm.
Once you get past those 8,
Mhm.
it transitions to 2 family kind of attached.
So they're basically duplexes in a sense?
Correct. For town.
Shotgun style, so, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I've got a question, Ms. Go. Who's providing the utilities?
The city of Daytona Beach.
Okay, does it require, I know it requires a consumption permit?
The city has a consumptive use permit.
Okay.
Right.
And is there an area there, and I can't, this because the writing's kind of small,
Mhm.
where the reclaimed water comes back, is reclaimed water storage? There's not? Okay. Okay. That was my concern. We're good. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna, we do have one participation form if you'd like to speak to it afterwards. Mr. Stephen Costello. Mr. Costello.
Hello, Stephen Costello of 1524 Wild Rose Lane. I'm an adjacent property owner.
Okay, you've heard, would you like to make a comment to this case?
Yes, I oppose this zoning change. Higher density housing does not match the characteristic of this neighborhood. The surrounding neighborhood is zoned R4. This property is already zoned R6, and the density should not exceed the current zoning classification. Higher density development will not benefit the existing community with increased traffic, noise, and less open space, while increasing the load and demand on existing public services such as schools, water, stormwater, and sewer. If this planning commission and county council will roll over to every developer, what is the point of the zoning code? I urge you and the county council to stop granting exceptions to further degrade the quality of life for the existing community and adding fuel to the fire of the already out of control development in the area. Let the developers ruin some other county with never-ending urban sprawl and overcrowding, because that is the direction that Volusia County is headed in now. The only benefactors of high-density development are developers which most likely do not live in or work in the area in which they are building.
Okay. With any questions for the applicant? Mr. Shams?
If I can respond.
Sure.
This is not actually a density increase. It's within the density allowance of the urban medium intensity. So what the applicant's proposing is simply a different mix of uses. This is still about 6 units per acre, which is within that 4 to 8 range. So they're not changing anything.
Okay, that's for the future land use, correct, Mr. Shams? So in your future land use plan, it was already considered in there for the densities that you're speaking about?
Mr. Chair, just to add on that, the rezoning is currently R6 two-family, so they can have 48 two-family units if they just went straight zoning. They're going to PUD because they want a mixture of single-family and two-family, which drops it down to 40 units.
And what exactly is the breakdown of the mixture?
I think it was 8 single-family units and the rest, and 32 multifamily.
Also, there's she spoke on public transit for the users of this community, and there's not really any sidewalks or anything to access the public transit that is nearby. All these communities don't have any sidewalks that would be accessible to them, which would also cause a safety concern.
Okay. All right. Let me see if we have any questions for you. Any other questions for him? All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming in, and I understand where you're coming from. Okay. All right. Do we have any other public participation forms for this case?
No, sir.
All right. We're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for, I'll give you a chance to rebut that if you'd like, Ms. Go, before we close the floor.
No problem. Again, Jessica Gowa, Cobb Law Firm, 149 South Woodridge Avenue. Try to say it faster every time I get up. Just a few other things I heard a mention of urban sprawl. This is an infill development. There are urban services here to support the development. It's surrounded by the similar densities of development, although there is that switch from R4 to R6, so I understand that. It is a reduction in potential traffic generation that was touched on in your staff report. We have a letter of availability for the services from the city of Daytona Beach, so we've checked on that. And then the removal of open space, I'll say that the county's PUD process requires a higher percentage of open space. So we're voluntarily providing that. There will be a 0.86 acre park on the rear portion of the site. You can see along with the stormwater facilities, so that rear portion will really remain open, maybe a community garden or a park area. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other did you have any other questions?
I was going to ask Jessica real quick. I just want to make you get back up there again. The pricing of the houses in the neighborhood compared to the pricing here, what's the difference?
So under the restriction, the cost of living in this house has to be certified at less than 30% of the area. I always get the A wrong. Inside joke with Trish and Steve on what AMI stands for, area median income of the overall area, in order to qualify as a certified affordable housing project. We haven't looked at exact, sales in this area as a comparison. My friend lived 4 houses down and just sold for a pretty good price. That was within that threshold as well, but that's not scientific data. I just happen to know someone who lives on the road.
I'm just thinking you don't want to put affordable housing right in the middle of a booming area, which will draw being in real estate, it'll draw all their prices down on their houses.
And I will say that in Daytona, based on the work I've done with them on their affordability study in that kind of core area, the AMI for that area, which is larger than Daytona and includes some of Deltona, which probably throws us off a bit, is higher than the area specific if you looked at that zip code. And so under this, you can go up to the 120% of the AMI to then calculate that 30. And so if you're looking at rentals, it's, somewhere between $800 to $1,000 a month. If you're looking at a mortgage, it's probably around that same level.
In this same area, okay.
Correct. And so it's pretty standard there.
Okay.
Is this part of your applicant staff? Okay.
Yes, Matthew Welch, Cobb Cole, 149 South Ridgewood, Daytona Beach. I serve as general counsel to our local Habitat for Humanity of Greater Volusia County. But I wanted to, Mr. Sigsma, I wanted to respond directly. The value of the homes, we have to sell them. Habitat International requires us to sell the homes for appraised value. Whatever the applicant can afford, we take that as a mortgage with them, and then we make up the difference through our grant systems and through affordable grants and things like that. Okay?
Does that satisfy your question, Mr. Sixman?
That was good.
Okay. All right, we're going to close the floor for public participation, open it up for commission discussion or motion. Okay, let's wake up. I will say this, you know, I look at the densities, you know I look at the densities, but it looks to me like it's downsizing rather than upsizing.
From what it could be, yeah. And that's
What could be there.
That
And
is one thing I'm looking at.
I sympathize with the speaker previously, but unfortunately, through the future land use, that's what it was designated for. So that's just where I'm at on that. And I will accept the motion.
Frank, you heard the man.
You've been quiet all day.
All right.
Yeah, Jeff, you're being quiet over there.
All right, so I will make a motion that we forward the rezoning application, case number PUD-23-006, to the county council for final action with a recommendation of approval, subject to staff recommended conditions.
I'll second it. We'll let county council deal with it.
Okay, I've got a motion for Mr. Costa to forward the rezoning application case number PUD 23-006 to county council for final action with recommendation approval, subject to staff recommended conditions, and a second for Mr. Six. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
One thing I want to note on that is, like, if it was adding a lot more density to it, I'd be totally against it, but it's within the limits, so.
All right, Mr. Sixman, if you'll give us our last case, please.
Okay, last case, 022014, ordinance 2023-15, mobile food dispensing vehicle regulations.
Okay, Mr. Hanson, this is you.
Good morning, once again, Michael Hanson, Planning Development Services. This case has been a long time coming. As you may recall, one of our predecessors on the planning team, Mr. Bedford, presented to the PLDRC in October of 2021, which incidentally happened to be the first month that I was here with the county. And there was discussion over the proposal of regulating food trucks within the county due to the recently at the time adopted state statute section 509.102. The county council then directed staff to take a look into regulating or creating an ordinance to regulate where food trucks could operate within the county. And during that conversation, and that the PLDRC had in 2021 of October 2021, staff has been working on, based on the recommendations that we received from this body and the county council, to draft the proposed ordinance, which you now have in front of you. We've had a number of staffing changes, so it's taken a while to get back to you. The ordinance has been sent out to the Volusia County Association of Responsible Development for comments. We have not received any comments from VCARD. Otherwise, we've also contacted several municipalities within the county that have similar ordinances regulating mobile food dispensing vehicle regulations, otherwise known as food trucks, and we haven't had any issues identified to date. In the proposed ordinance that we have, the county has updates to the definitions in 72-2 to create definitions for mobile food dispensing vehicles, which use the same definition that the state uses. Otherwise, we have a definition for mobile food vending as well. And in the ordinance, it also creates a new section of code. Would be section 72-309 for mobile food dispensing vehicles. And in the draft ordinance, we were looking at creating, allowing for mobile food dispensing vehicles as a conditional use with commercial, industrial, public, and non-residential portions of PUD zoning classifications. Additionally, it would allow the use for mobile food dispensing vehicles as a special exception in the prime agriculture, rural agriculture, and forestry resource zoning classifications. Part of the requirements will require having owners written notarized permission. They have to have an existing business or agricultural use on the actual site. And it's, either the conditional use or special exception would not impact any existing buffers, required parking aisles, right-of-ways or public sidewalks. It prohibits their use on vacant or undeveloped property, and also limits the hours of operation to 18 hours within a 24-hour period. If I recall, that was Member Costa's recommendation at the last meeting that this came up with. And it also makes it so that the vehicles cannot be stored on site outside of the hours of operation. We have supporting comprehensive plan policies in place. In the staff report for this ordinance, I'm available for any questions that you may have.
I got a
Thank
question.
you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Costa?
Yep. It's been a while since we looked at this, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. On the conditional use permit itself, I see that there is an application fee of $162.56. Is that per day, per week, per permit?
From my understanding, that's a conditional use permit that would be ran with the land, so it would just be the one-time kind of fee, as long as that conditional use on the land is still in.
So it's on the land itself, not on the actual food trucks?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, we cannot license or regulate the food trucks themselves. What this is, it applies to the land.
Correct.
We don't care about which food truck comes and goes. It makes sure that that the owner of the land can have the food truck in the designated area.
So this is a one-time fee, and it goes concurrently with the owner and the land, you said?
Yes, it's with the land, not with the food truck.
So technically, for $162, I can have food trucks there for the next 10 years, if my property fits the bill, correct?
I think so, yes.
Is that about right?
Yes, however, that fee goes up each year with, so it may be 160 this year. The next guy that comes in next year, it will be slightly higher because our fees go up each
Understand that, but if I pay for it this year, I am locked in until I either sell the property or...
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sounds reasonable to me.
If we see an application come up off of 415, we know what it is. That's a good deal.
Okay, any other questions for staff, Mr. Pender?
Is there any limitation on how many trucks can be at one site?
There isn't a limitation in the code. They still need to meet parking requirements. So you cannot, reduce the site because it's kind of like an accessory commercial use. So you've got your primary with all of your required parking, your buffers, and so so long as you are not taking up any of those required areas, there's no limitations on the number of food trucks that you can put on your site, so long as the site can accommodate and isn't losing any parking, isn't losing any open space, isn't losing any buffers.
How is it, who governs this? To determine that at 12 midnight, that's the end of that 18 hours, that unit is actually going to pull away from there and carry it someplace else to wherever they store it and bring it back the next day. Because I'm seeing trucks that's just parked.
Well, that would be a code enforcement issue. So
someone would just need to make a code complaint.
Yes. It's like all code enforcement complaints, we are complaint driven. So it'll take some time because different businesses operate at different hours. Some businesses are late night, and if they're a bar, for example, they want to have an adjacent food truck. That is a later night business than your normal 9 to 9 type scenario. So it depends upon the location, whether or not they're storing it, whether there's evidence that the code enforcement officer, upon reasonable investigation, determines that they are there beyond the 18 hours.
Mr. Costa?
Yeah, it just opened up a bunch of other questions. So I'm going to go with the sample that I know of personally. How does this affect, for instance, special events? Case in point, let's say Cackleberry, for instance, where food trucks come in, they're parked there for the duration, whether it's 10 days or the short 5-day period.
It
So
doesn't, under the applicability section, so we're on page 7 of 20, A1 Romanet I, it says it's mobile, it's basically an exception. It says mobile food dispensing vehicles associated with a special event in accordance with Chapter 20, outdoor entertainment events in accordance with Chapter 10, which is the Cackleberries, shall not be subject to the standards of this section. So they are subject to the special event permit or the outdoor entertainment permit rather than this section. This section is just for your normal business that wants to have a food truck on the daily rather than a special
got
event.
it. All right. So all right. So that eliminates the question. Whether, let's say, for instance, the church decides to have a festival for a weekend and they pull a permit for that, that truck could stay there for the duration. It doesn't have to come and go. All right. Secondly, once you get your permit application, you're issued your permit, and you say it's good for as long as I own the property. How can I lose that permit?
If you violate it, then we take you through and you're found to be in violation under code enforcement. Your permit can be revoked.
So you go for the code enforcement board and go
Yes,
through the, okay.
Yeah, we
got
need
it.
an initial violation first because there's due process.
Sure.
It's something that is attached to your land, so you would need to have a violation, and then we can start the revocation process. Would be administrative. That.
All right. I just want to make sure there was a way to revoke it if it needed to be. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bender.
How was it determined, so the property owners got his permits in order to be able to allow food truck? Now, who's gonna make the determination if he decides to bring in 5 or 6 or however many it is, 2, whether or not it interrupts the number of parking spaces that's necessary for the operation? Is there any kind of inspection that's
Yeah,
gonna come in
our
there?
zoning enforcement official, because that's why the conditional use. A conditional use is a staff issued permit, requires a rudimentary site plan with demonstration of the number of required parking, demonstration of where you're putting those food trucks so they're not, impacting any of the buffers, and that they're not impacting any of the required parking spaces. So there is review by our zoning enforcement official. You get, your conditional use saying if you want a food truck, put it here. Don't expand it beyond.
So they won't be able to come back and play, I didn't know that I couldn't have one here.
Yes, because it's not, it's a conditional use permit, which is by right. You just need to come through staff first and make sure you're meeting that criteria.
Okay, Mr. Sawyer, my question is more on the legal side. The state put out a statute that we couldn't regulate food trucks. Is that correct?
So there's two aspects. We can't license them, and we can't impede on what the DBPR is already doing with food trucks. It leaves the opportunity to zone them. And the preemption that we're dealing with is you can't prohibit them in your entire county. You have to allow them somewhere, and you can put reasonable regulations on the location. So we cannot regulate the food truck itself. What we are doing is we're regulating the sites where food trucks can go.
Okay, when I mention this, are we not opening ourselves up to a legal argument by circumventing the state statute with
No,
this
because the
ordinance?
state specifically allows us to do this.
Specifically allows us
Yes.
to regulate the zone?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I wanted to question, because I don't want to get into passing this ordinance and then we ended up with a legal battle and spending more of the taxpayers' money.
So I'm going to read the section, 509, 102, subsection 3. This section may not be construed to affect a municipality, county, or other local government entity's authority to regulate the operation of a mobile food dispensing vehicles other than the regulations described in subsection 2. Subsection 2 is basically don't license them, don't register them, don't permit them, don't put fees on the food trucks themselves. Those are granted to the state. You can't add a license, and then you cannot prohibit them from operating within the entirety of the entity's jurisdiction. So those are your no-go zones. We can't license the food trucks individually. We can't register them. We can't regulate the food trucks. We have to allow them somewhere, but everything else is open to our regulations. So what we are doing is we're regulating the site. So any commercial site, if they wanted to have food truck as an accessory use to their existing commercial site, they can, subject to meeting the conditional use criteria.
Okay. The other question I had for you in the analysis here, we have must have an existing business or agriculture use on site.
Yes.
So in the agricultural zone properties, are we looking at a bona fide agriculture use? Is
If
that
you
what
are
we're
a
looking?
bona fide agricultural use, it depends, because there's two aspects of it. If you just want to have a food truck on your farm and it's there for less than an hour, go ahead, you don't even need a conditional use permit. It also applies to active construction sites. That was something that the PLDRC kind of requested, you know, to make sure that the workers or the farm workers aren't going outside of the work area. Because the food truck is not a bona fide agricultural activity unless it's like a farm stand or they're actually selling the produce that they provide, it is not part of your normal agricultural classification. So you would need to either go through a conditional use permit or even a special exception permit if you want to have a permanent food truck in the agriculture areas. It's kind of designed to make sure that we don't commercialize what is normally an agricultural area. So when it talks about agricultural use, that is a bona fide farm operation.
Okay, so we also have an existing business. If you take a piece of commercial property and it does not have an existing business on it, why are we not allowing these, other than for parking purposes? Why are we not allowing them to operate on these properties?
Because you need restrooms, you need, you know, kind of a hookup, utility hookup. So that's why the normal regulations for these food trucks is you don't put them on vacant properties. Because normally if you have there's a good chance that the vacant property owner is not there and someone's just kind of squatting on their vacant land. So that's the check. We want to make sure that there is some business associated with it. And also it's kind of a play fair so that, you know, a food truck doesn't just occupy a vacant parcel that is completely surrounded by restaurants, for example.
Okay.
So you need an active business there. And that active business will, you know, you'll have a point of contact for the site in case anything goes wrong. If they're there for a prolonged period of time, if they're in violation of the statute, if they're generating too much noise, you want an active business rather than a vacant site.
Okay. The other question was provide outdoor dining areas. Does that eliminate seating capacity as a fold-up bench or fold-up chairs that they may have on the outside? To give you an example, you got a construction crew that comes in and wants to utilize this food truck, and they put out some folding chairs or something of that nature, not necessarily a dining area, but it would give them facilitate while they're utilizing what they purchased from the food truck.
I think that's prohibited, right? It's a prohibition on, was it permanent outdoor seating or is it temporary for this one? But that was intended to not have those additional outdoor seating provisions. So if there's already a pre-existing outdoor seating, like in conjunction with a restaurant or an existing park bench, that's perfectly fine. But the food truck itself cannot provide a separate outdoor seating and criteria. That's something that we've seen in other jurisdictions regulating food trucks. You don't want to make it a more kind of permanent type situation. You want it to be accessory to an existing business.
I mean, it would have to be removed in the same hours, the 6-hour time frame.
I don't think it can have it at all for the outdoor. Right?
No, it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. Right. It doesn't allow for it at all. And I was wondering why, when it had to be, if you were to tie it into where it would have to be removed, why couldn't they have that?
As it reads in the draft ordinance, says a mobile food dispensing vehicle should not provide any outdoor dining areas, but may use the existing outdoor dining or other permit seating authorized for an existing business on site with the business owner's permission. That's for the conditional use within the PUDs. And under the special exception portion for the A1, A2, and FR, it says that a mobile food dispensing vehicle should not provide any outdoor dining areas at all.
That's what I'm saying. We put that in there, correct?
Yes, that was based, from my understanding, due to the conversation that we had with the PLDRC back in October 2021.
Okay.
So one thing that we can do, because your point is well taken, people want to sit down and eat when they get their sandwich.
Yeah.
So we could add a word to this that says no permanent, because obviously the idea is we don't want people building things and making permanent structures that they pull up to.
That is my point.
So if we add the word, right, no permanent, or let's see, let's find it. Right, a mobile food dispensing vehicle shall not provide any permanent outdoor dining area.
Okay.
Would that work?
That's would be more reasonable to me. I don't know about the other members. I mean, you get any differently? No. Okay, that was my questions. We do have some public comments, so we're going to listen to those if no one else has got any questions for staff. Okay. Mr. Randy Hemsmoth. I hope I didn't mess that up. Okay, and what's your name, sir? Okay, Mr. Polino.
Thank you very much. I'm John Polino. I'm actually in the restaurant business, and I have a food trailer. Randy has the property that we're
Okay,
planning on
can I
putting
get your address, sir?
the address for this property is 600, or my personal address?
Yes, sir, when you speak, you're supposed to give your-
322 East Central Boulevard, apartment 604, Orlando.
Okay.
And the property that we're talking about is 600 South Kepler Road, a place in the sun, which is a garden center. I have to say that I've been at a lot of these meetings actually here and overseas, and you are the nicest group of people I've ever met. You're very supportive, and you try to get things going. That's great. I really appreciate that. Thank you. You just were talking about seating. One of the reasons why other councils had eliminated seating, outdoor seating for these trucks is because a lot of times they're actually parked on the street, or they're parked in parks or in areas that are more public, and they don't want them to put seating out there. But yes, you have to have seating if someone's going to eat a sandwich or you know, an ice cream or something that they're using a knife and a fork for. You really do need to have the seating. So I really appreciate that you're able to change that, because it's really important. A lot of food trucks, you'll notice, are actually attached to restaurants. They seem to not have a kitchen. They use the truck as the kitchen. When you have situations like that, or where a food truck would be full-time, like a garden center, something that you kind of create a little cafe for a garden center, which is quite nice. A lot of garden centers up north and overseas have cafes in them. They bring a good amount of business to the garden center. It would be crazy to want that trailer to be removed every single day when it's there full-time 7 days a week. So I'd like you to look at having some consideration for a trailer or a truck to be able to stay in its position when it's in a situation where it's private property and it's part of a business, whether it be a restaurant or whether it be a garden center or something like that. There's no reason whatsoever for it to be picked up and moved. There's a lot of effort in that. There's issues with refrigeration and food and product as well. So I would love for you to consider somehow that a trailer or a food truck, when it's in a permanent situation 7 days a week, why wouldn't it stay? There's no reason for it to move. If it's about noise or anything like that, which I'm not sure it would be, because it wouldn't be noisy, you would have more issues with it being moved in and moved out. There are places like your farms, your strawberry farms, and places like that that have food trucks there, you know, for the whole season. Like Southern Hills Farm, for instance, they have a dozen food trucks on their property that are there for the whole season.
Okay, Mr. Polino, we need to wrap it up. You've went your 3 minutes, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And if you do have any questions on food trucks and you need to communicate to someone who has them, you're welcome to call me or ask me.
Okay, any question for the speaker? All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Heemsoth.
Hello, everybody. I am Randy Heimstoss. I live at 2000 Zaragoza Avenue, DeLand, Florida. I own a place in the Sun Nurseries at 600 South Kepler Road here in DeLand. Tony. I am actually here to speak on, I noticed in the draft of the ordinance that A1, A2, but not A3 are included in the allowance. At this point, I wouldn't be allowed to, even if you said, sure, go ahead and have one, I wouldn't be allowed to have one on A3. And I'm seeing how A3 is transitional. I guess I'm a little baffled as to why that isn't included in there. It seems, you know, again, A3 at this point, we run a retail nursery selling agricultural products and stuff, and if I wanted to grow blueberries or a petting farm or something like that, that would be allowed under my current zoning and everything else, but I couldn't have a food truck there to hand out coffee or sodas or anything else like that. I was wondering about the reasoning.
I'll let the staff answer that.
So we have several different agricultural zoning classifications. A1 is 10 acres, A2 is 5 acres, A3 is only 1 acre, and we felt that that size was not sufficient enough to fit everything that needed to be done on those parcels.
4 acres, so how do I have a special exception as it is to do the nursery, so how do I get around that? Do I apply for special exceptions? Do I understand I should meet with one of Mr. Hams or Mr. Hanson on a preliminary meeting here, but this came up before I had a chance to do that.
We do have a pre-application meeting set up with this gentleman, and we can work through all of those issues with
Yeah,
him.
well, I started to say, if we're requiring a special exception on the A classification, agricultural classifications, we're requiring that anyway. Why are we eliminating those? Because it has to go through a special exception regardless.
Yes,
And I'll save you
it's
time,
because
sir.
these are the this special exception criteria is for your farm type operations. Your A3 gets kind of a mix of heavy residential plus farm.
The perfect spot for one.
Right.
Well, it still has to go through the special exception side. They still have to bring it before us, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's the issue is okay, someone is in the middle of a neighborhood and it's all zoned A3. We'd have to carve, like, it's not as clear cut as with your A1, A2, which is heavily agriculture. Your A3 does get into residential type neighborhoods and subdivisions because it's only a 1 acre minimum size. We can take a look at that between now and county council, but we deliberately did not include A3 because of the lot size and the fact that it is more residential than agriculture because that's.
Well, the reason I'm even asking this, because that could be brought up in this special exception request on the size of the A3 property, because just because it's A3 doesn't mean it's 1 acre. It could be, like this gentleman said, 4 acres. He's already got a special exception, and your special exception could be limited on time and everything else when it comes to the type of use that you're going to use it. It could be limited to whether the property ever gets broke up from the 4 acres to the 1 acre side. This special exception would address all this. And that's why I'm even questioning why we're limiting it. We're totally we allow agricultural use on the A3.
It's mainly because of the residential part. You
Right,
don't want
and-
to have these, what's essentially a commercial business in the middle of what you're going to see is A3 residential subdivisions. So we can take a look at that, maybe put in a requirement if the commission, wants to include A3, make it such that it doesn't have an existing residential use, that it's only pursuant to non-residential or agricultural uses, and then you can do it on these A3 categories.
I guess my point is we're going to address this through the special exception side.
Well, the issue, yes, it's a special exception, but the decision can't be arbitrary. It needs to have some criteria. So
Okay.
what's the distinguishing factor between a 1 acre A3 residential lot versus this 4 acre A3 fernery? Within this transitional designation, you have residential and you have non-residential. We don't want to have food trucks in a residential community because it's not compatible. That you can automatically see that's going to get a lot of complaints. So let us take a look at that A3, see if we can put any additional restrictions on it. It can't be a current residential use, or it has to be an agricultural use. If you have a bona fide ag classification, we can take a look at that.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm agreeable to that, if I may, because I mean, again, it's transitional. That seems like the exact place this should go, cafe type
Let's go ahead.
borderline area. I mean, 1 acre isn't really enough to farm on or do anything other than.
Okay, sir, if you want to go ahead and finish your
Oh, okay.
comments.
Well, that was really about it, other than obviously I am looking at the possibility of putting a food truck there. And I guess I would ask what the definition of a food truck is. When does it become a permanent structure? If we remove the trailer, remove the wheels, just like a mobile home, is it now a permanent structure?
If you can get a building permit for it,
Am
it
I
is
li-
not.
like
It is
it's
no
not-
longer considered a vehicle, because a food truck has a chassis and it's movable. So if you permanently incorporate it, as in you pull a building permit for it, then it
Similar
becomes
to
a
a mobile
permanent
home.
structure. Yes. Well, a mobile home is still on a chassis. It's still considered a vehicle. So something has to be done such that the building division or the building department will accept it as a permanent structure that's subject to the building code.
I could do the workaround on that, because it does allow on my acreage mobile homes. So, okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, do we have any other public participation for this?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. We're gonna close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or motion. And getting back into the permanent situation, you can always have a permit as an accessory structure and meet the permitting process if he wants to leave it there permanent.
Yes, but you'd have to, I mean, then you get into a use, right? You can't,
It wouldn't
you
be a
can't have a
food truck.
permanent restaurant in your
Yeah.
normal
It
agricultural.
may look like a
type
food truck, but it's not a food truck.
And that's one of the issues with, looking at these agricultural areas, is we want to address the food deserts. We want to address, workers having access to food trucks, but we need to protect the agricultural, designation by not turning it into a commercial or unnecessarily commercializing the agricultural areas.
All right.
I have a question for staff. Yeah, I just need clarification because I'm reading this two different ways. This particular ordinance, as I'm looking for, and special exceptions that go with it, are primarily, we're targeting primarily the transient food trucks. In other words, shows up for an event, it's here for up to 18 hours, and it's gone. That's the intent of this ordinance, correct?
To the extent, yes, it can't be permanently there.
Okay.
So in terms of, yes, it needs to leave the site at some point in time in 24 hours, yes.
All right, so then in the terms of the gentleman who was speaking recently, so they're talking about, I think it's a garden center or whatever, and they're looking at a food truck to turn it into a cafe, more of a permanent structure. It no longer comes under this ordinance anymore. Now it's a different animal, is it not?
Yes, yes, so this
So
is.
this doesn't apply to them for
Right.
that particular
Yes.
concept.
There is a new concept called temporary commercial kitchen, so we are also preempted from that. That seems to be talking about a different thing altogether. We'll have to come back on whether or not we need any changes.
Mhm.
So if they're envisioning something like a temporary commercial kitchen that is, usually done in conjunction with an existing business in a restaurant, that's a different matter entirely than our regulation of food trucks, which are mobile dispensing vehicles. So
Okay, that's why I just want to get the clarification on that, because I'm hearing permanent, semi-permanent, and then I'm looking at this ordinance, and we're talking two different animals
yes.
completely.
Yeah, they are supposed to leave. They're not supposed to be there permanently unless through some.
This
other
is for our
special-
fairs, for temporarily, workers are on site, farm workers, special events, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
That's what this intent is. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comment? I'll entertain a motion. And we do have, whoever makes the motion, if they want to include or exclude the comments that the staff has agreed to look at before it goes to council.
Yeah, well, we might want to discuss those first, so we know what we're talking about. A3?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point you brought up, too.
A3,
Mm-hmm.
and what else was discussed? Outside seating? Is that correct? We're going to take
Yes.
and eliminate the permanent
Yes. so,
outside seating. That was the other thing that we.
So if you want to allow temporary seating on page 8 of your report, line 7 would now read, "A mobile food dispensing vehicle shall not provide any permanent outdoor dining areas."
Okay.
We would add the word permanent, and then again on line 30 of the same page, number V, "A mobile food dispensing vehicle shall not provide any permanent outdoor dining areas."
We just,
What was it?
for
What was
the
the first
outdoor
line?
dining areas, we're looking at just permanent.
Yes, adding the word permanent to line 7 and line 30 on page 8 of your staff report.
Okay.
All right.
And staff will look into the A3 zoning before it goes to council.
Yes, we'll see if we can
Okay.
find out something that works.
All right. Okay, so whoever's going to make the motion, keep that in mind.
All right, I'll make a motion that we forward ordinance 2023-15 to the county council with a recommendation of approval with the following changes or footnotes. That we look at the possibility of adding A3 to the zoning classifications in this ordinance. That we add on what is that?
Line 7, line 30.
Yeah.
Yep, that is, line 7 of page 8. Add the word, shall not provide any permanent outdoor dining on line 7, and then the same on line 30, not provide any permanent outdoor dining areas.
Perfect. Second that one. Very well put, Mr. Bennett.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Costa to forward ordinance 2023-15 to the county council with recommendation of approval with the following changes: to have the staff look at A3 zoning being included in the agriculture. Is that correct?
Correct.
And also adding permanent to the outdoor dining area on line 7, page 8, and line 30. Is that also page 8?
Page 8, yes.
Page 8. And a second from Mr. Sixma.
One question on the recommendation on the A3, which I think should be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to put non-residential A3 or not?
I think that's part of it, because there's a reason why we put
Okay.
in. And
I'll let them word it when they gets to the county council.
we'll also maybe include A4, because A4 is 2.5 acres, I believe. It just,
Yeah,
it
why
actually
isn't
gets
that
larger.
included? Yeah, because I think our discussion in our panel was for any agricultural zone properties that we
Well,
never.
it's the one that is for
designated that.
agricultural use, because our agricultural zoning categories has a lot of mixture of residential and kind of non-residential type uses.
Right.
And so we made it by special exception in your larger agricultural zoning districts to avoid putting them in agricultural residential, development types. So that's why it's A2, A1, A2, and forestry resource, and specifically excludes A3 and A4, because that's when you
You
get
may want
to
to make that footnote include A4.
All right, we'll add that to the motion then,
Okay.
to include A3 and A4.
Second.
Okay. Okay. We're going to forward ordinance 2023-15 to the county council with recommendation of approval with the consideration of having staff look at the agricultural zonings of A3 and A4. Have some wording put in there for that, and also add permanent to outdoor dining area on line 7, page 8, and line 30, page 8. From Mr. Costa, and a second from Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, that ends our normal business. Do we have any other public items? Ms.
No, sir.
Staff items?
3 quick items. The first is you saw your first affordable housing project come through today. Next month, we'll be bringing the actual comprehensive plan changes for the affordable housing. So you'll see that next month, which will allow us to do that without having to go through that PUD process. And the other item that you will see next month is our administrative variance. And that will include allowing an administrative adjustment for dimensional requirements that have a 10% deviation or less. And it will also allow an administrative approval for fence height for those side yard situations that we've discussed before. So you'll no longer see those if you approve that or recommend approval of that. Second item, we emailed everybody a list of community workshops that we'll be performing through June. We invite you all to attend. We're holding a community workshop in each county council district throughout the month to get feedback on how everybody would like to grow their community. And it's an effort to revise our future land use element of our comprehensive plan. So if you didn't get those dates, let us know and we'll resend those out to you. And we encourage your attendance at those. And then the very last item is, if you know anybody who's interested in sitting on the PLDRC for District 4, unincorporated Volusia County, near the Ormond Beach area, Mr. Kent is still looking for someone to appoint. So if anybody has some suggestions, if you could please direct them either to Carissa Green in our manager's office or to Mr. Kent. We'd certainly like to fill that last position.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. On the comment of the meetings, those are advertised, so whether you can have more than one member of this board at the meetings without violating sunshine, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And we have been informed that our chair and Councilmember Dempsey will be at every single meeting. So we already do have made plans for that.
Okay.
How long are those meetings you think they're going to last? Workshops?
They're 2 hours.
Okay, good.
You don't have to stay the whole time. You can come and draw on the map and leave if you don't want to.
You can come in incognito.
Mm.
Okay, any other staff items, Ms. Smith?
No, sir.
Okay. Staff comments?
No, sir.
Okay, commission comments?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Costa?
Yes, I want to apologize. First off, that email did come through last night on the parking situation, so I didn't see it until this morning, until after I got here. So my apologies there. Either way, still the parking situation, well, I'll leave the adjectives off.
We are currently, we have some construction activity around the downtown, and we will reach out to our facilities manager and reiterate the importance of having your parking spaces with the cones.
The other question is for Paulo, and it's more on line of procedural. And I want to use case V23053 as an example. So staff recommends denial of that variance. When the motion is made, should we make the motion in conjunction with staff's recommendation? In other words, a motion to deny the variance and then we vote it up or down? As opposed to, in this case, I made a motion to approve it and then we voted it. Is there a procedural differential there?
There isn't a procedural differential, except to the extent that what you're really doing is you're asking a question and you're receiving an answer.
Mhm.
So, say for example, there's a motion to approve with certain conditions, and that motion fails. That doesn't automatically kill the item. That just answers the question, which is, I want to approve with these conditions. So someone or the chair can ask for another motion either to approve with different conditions or to deny. But so that's the only difference. The only thing I would say is that the preference is to have all your motions be in the affirmative.
In the affirmative as
You
opposed.
You are voting for something, whether that is to approve or deny. That makes the record clear, so it's not just failure to receive a majority vote for approval of the entire item.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking that question is I've watched the council in some cases do follow with the recommendation and then they voted up or down. So a no vote to deny is actually an automatic yes vote. It's a reversal of, but
in a normal parliamentary procedure, when you're not dealing with quasi-judicial, yes, because we need to create, well, it used to be you can do that, but now the Florida legislature has changed some of the rules such that we need written findings for approvals and denials.
So keep the motions in the positive, in the affirmative.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my biggest question right there.
Because
Thanks.
we have to have a finite decision. It can't be assumed decision by a denial.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Okay, that's it from the commission comments. Anybody else? Okay, we do have a citizen comment. Mrs. Sieber? Good morning, ma'am. Get your name and address for the record.
Suzanne Schreiber. It's 548 Sandy Oaks Boulevard in Ormond Beach. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to thank all of you for your service on this committee, but especially to those of you who previously served on the committee with extended commitment. Richard Feller is no longer serving on the committee, but I want to take a moment to thank him for his service over the course of the last 2 years. Sometimes bad things happen to good people that are out of their control, and sometimes it can seemingly diminish the good work that they did. I want Richard to know, as well as all of you, that his time spent on this committee was not taken for granted. Spending his own time, energy, and efforts are appreciated for a volunteer position. And he served with integrity as far as I'm concerned. It was obvious to anyone who paid attention that he cares deeply for our county and was fair-minded to each decision that he made. We live in polarizing times, but there's never an inappropriate time, I don't think, to thank people for their public service to our community. So I want to thank Richard for his service over the last 2 years to the PLDRC, and I also want to thank all of you again for your own service now, and especially those that served the last 2 years. And lastly, sitting here today, there were there might have been 2 items. This is completely separate from what I just talked about. There were 1 to 2 items that were on the agenda that were located in the wildlife corridor, and being that the Volusia Forever was voted for by taxpayers and there's a full section of the website, I am asking, I don't know if it would be the committee or staff or both, if they would consider putting a link to the Volusia Forever page in the appropriate area from this department, because there are people who might be eligible to sell their land and they are paid. It's a willing sellers program. Being that the county supports the program, I don't know, if there's some legal matter that would hold that up. I wouldn't know, not an attorney, but I'm bringing it up. For full transparency, I serve on the Volusia Forever Committee, but I'm bringing it up as an individual in the community. So if staff or someone would like to weigh in on that, or not right now, that's fine too, but I just wanted to bring it up. So
Okay,
thank all of you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have anybody else from the public who'd like to speak?
No, sir.
Anybody from the press? Okay, and before we close the meeting, do you want to address Ms. Schreiber's concern as far as the link to Volusia Forever?
So the PLDRC sees variances, special exceptions, CPAs, and what we have done in all cases now over the past few months is we've started to incorporate, and you'll see on under site conditions of your staff reports, whether something is either in a BMAP, a PFA, the wildlife corridor, or a floodplain. So we are addressing all of those things now. If they have an impact to the specific issue that you are dealing with, we will evaluate that in our staff reports, and we will have a map in all of our staff reports if it is in the wildlife corridor. So all of those staff reports are out on our website for anybody to see and go through, and those maps are part of the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. This meeting is adjourned.